man the two militiamen we interviewed accused of hatching a plot to attack Camp Grayling, Mark Koernke. His day job is that of maintenance man at the University of Michigan, but his off-duty hours are spent in violent opposition to the U.S. government. We set up our camera in Lorene's Village Cafe in Dexter, Michigan. Mr. Koernke, you're known as Mark from Michigan, and you're also known by people as someone who espouses violence against the federal government. What are you angry about?
Well, first of all, we're not espousing violence against the federal government, but we are recommending that we should be prepared, if need be, to defend ourselves in the event of attempted tyranny. And in fact, I'm not angry, but I am concerned, and I want to make sure that they understand that there are many millions of Americans are concerned with what is an obvious attempt to erode the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States.
Well, you say you don't espouse violence, but we've just seen you hold up rope and say you can get about 4 politicians and 100 feet of rope, and we've seen you brandish an AK-47. What do you call that?
Well, actually, if you look, and depending on which film that you have there, you might notice that off to my left were a veritable plethora of politicians, some of which couldn't stop chuckling at the comment. It was directed at them, including several congressmen or individuals who were running for a congressional race. So that was not accidental. And it was meant to prove a point with what is called coffin humor, and I think you're familiar with that yourself. You've seen it if you've discussed this with military people or even people who are in government.
So when you make those kind of threats, they were really just a joke?
Well, in this particular case, and this was not a threat, the idea was to drive the point home that if we are not careful, and this is one of the problems we are seeing right now with bad government or situations where the politician is apparently ignoring the voice of the American people, much like we saw with GATT, and also with NAFTA, where politicians stayed in the face of 9-1 or 11-1 opposition against it, they passed it anyway. Traditionally, in the United States, the American people, as in 1775, eventually realized that there was a need to change the system, and in this case, we do not recommend violence in offense, but if attacked, we'll defend.
All right. Do you know Mr. Eric Maloney, who was the Sergeant Major of the 6th Brigade of the Michigan Militia?
Only by second-party acquaintance, and we've seen him in at least one other meeting where we denounced what it was he was trying to advocate, where he was trying to claim that...
Now, let me ask you about that, because Mr. Maloney claims that you were the one who came up with the idea of blowing up Russian vehicles at Camp Grayling.
And that issue, well, thank you very much. That issue was something, it was similar to the events we saw over the last 72 hours. It was a media-orchestrated affair. And in fact, we dealt with that very quickly. We were very public about it. And in fact, though most people are not familiar, a tremendous amount of information was publicly available on both the meetings that took place, which had nothing to do with the Russian vehicles.
Well, you're telling me, sir, that you did not, in any event, ever advocate an attack on Camp Grayling. Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we can access Camp Grayling at our discretion any time that we wish.
What do you mean by that?
We have access to it for Department of Defense DCM shooting on a regular basis. We can enter the facility or any other military facility.
Do you know Timothy McVeigh, who is the suspect in the Oklahoma City bombing?
As far as we know, although again we've had virtually millions of people we've met in the last 6 months, and that is literally because we've been traveling the country speaking in 44 out of the 50 states, meeting with militia, constitutionalists, people from all over the Patriot movement across the country, and that's Patriot movement means just anybody that's involved with constitutional issues. We may have in passing, but we are going to have to check notes, see if there's anything on film.
You say check notes, but Brian Ross of our staff talked to someone in Florida today, had in his report someone who says they saw you in Florida about 18 months ago with Timothy McVeigh.
Well, that's another thing we have to check, because it's much like the reports we had over the last 72 hours that I was wanted by the FBI, ATF, and local law enforcement.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean you have to check? I mean, you know, do you not, whether you were in Florida with Timothy McVeigh or not?
Not that we know of, but again, I'm going to be realistic about this. Most of our meetings that we've had, which are public meetings, by the way, have anywhere from 700 to 5,000 people in attendance. And I meet, just as you do, Sam, when you travel around the country, virtually thousands and thousands of people. But we do keep notes, and contrary to most people, we have a tendency to keep them rather than throw them out.
Well, would you check your notes for us and see if you were in Florida about 18 months ago with Timothy McVeigh?
No, wait a minute. No, I didn't say that. We have been in Florida, but we have not, to our knowledge, with the exception for, again, I'm being very honest about this. In passing, if he was there, there's no way for us to verify it.
But, Mr. Koernke, the suggestion is not that he was in a crowd somewhere in Florida, but that you and he were traveling together. You would know that if you were doing that.
No, correction. Correction, we have not traveled together in any way, shape, or form. I would remember somebody, yes, traveling in the same vehicle with me, I think.
All right, so you don't know Timothy McVeigh unless he's just somebody that was in a crowd, and you might check your notes to see if the name comes up.
That is correct.
All right. So what about the Oklahoma City bombing? Did you have anything to do with that at all?
In no way, shape, or form did we have anything to do with the bombing, except that we do have concern now that the evidence is preserved and that the parties that have been arrested remain alive.
Excuse me, did you suggest yesterday that the U.S. government might have bombed that building itself?
Well, from the evidence that we've seen, and I might remind you, yes, we do have by the way, Sam might mention to the audience, we do have a radio program of our own Monday through Friday, 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And as has been the case in the past, we have made a point of collecting information on actions of this type. In your own media coverage, it was admitted that a series of devices...
My question was, Mr. Koernke, did you suggest that the U.S. government might have bombed that building in Oklahoma City?
And I'll explain, I'm qualifying that myself. You'll notice I never have a chance to make short statements. I think there is a possibility, and it's, unfortunately, with more evidence, is becoming more questionable as time goes by.
All right, we've about reached the end of our time. On the intelligence report, you sign off by saying, death to the New World Order.
We shall prevail.
Yeah, death to the New World Order, we shall prevail. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, and I was going to question this. So Oklahoma had a very interesting and exciting experience here last year. In their Oklahoma House of Representatives anti-New World Order resolution, enrolled House Resolution number 1047. Excuse me. And as we have said, it is our objective to make sure that the New World Order, of course, does not take the country. We are constitutionalists. We believe in a limited republic.
Death to the New World Order. What do you mean by death?
Absolutely.
That's a figure of speech?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't really mean death.
Well, as far as the New World Order is concerned, well, we don't plan on surrendering the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, so absolutely to the New World Order. With regard to its attempt to manipulate or create a one-world government, yes, death to the New World Order.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Koernke, for coming in tonight.
Thank you, Sam.